I'll never forget, we were doing some 40s, and at the time he was like 340 pounds, and he ran like a 5'2" 40. And I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, if this kid can buy in and if he can lose some weight and get powerful and strong, like watch out for this kid.
Welcome to Double Major, the newest Canadian college football show. I'm your host, Alex McComb. My guest today is a Winnipeg native who played college football on both sides of the border, Moorhead State in Minnesota, and the University of Manitoba, and now coaches and trains the next generation of Canadian football players in his hometown at Recruit Ready, an athlete development program he co-founded over a decade ago that sent players to the NFL, CFL, NCAA, and U Sports. Brad Black is with me today. Brad, thanks for joining me.
Alex, I appreciate you having me out, man. Thanks again.
You have quite the rap sheet. I almost ran out of breath there for a second.
Long time in the game.
Yeah, take me back to the beginning. What are your first memories of football?
Yeah, so my first memories of football would be probably playing in the schoolyard, to be perfectly honest with you. Back in elementary school, Pacific Junction in Winnipeg, playing at recess. And I think that's where I really found a passion for the game, waiting for the bell to ring and waiting to run out there with your friends and play pickup football in the schoolyard. That's kind of where things started for me. And, I kind of haven't looked back since. Was a huge Blue Bomber fan and Minnesota Vikings fan growing up. So that's kind of where things started in my football journey.
And what made you initially choose Moorhead State in Minnesota?
Yeah, so coming out of high school, this is back in the day where, the internet was just kind of in its infancy, and you had to get your highlight tape on the old school VHS, the big black VHS tapes and stuff, and it was just a lot different back then, and made some dubs and sent them out, and I had a bunch of different Canadian schools recruiting me. Never really, considered the U.S. and then I started getting some interest from some schools just across the border in Minnesota, North Dakota. So I went on some recruiting trips with some buddies, and I liked the opportunities that were going to be given to me in the U.S. and I felt it was something different, and I took the best opportunity that was presented to me.
And you were named Freshman of the Year at Moorhead. What do you remember about that season, but also the rest of your time in Minnesota as well?
Yeah, that first year, I was still pretty young. I'm born in December, so I was still pretty young getting down there. It was an eye-opening experience for me. I was playing football with people from all over the U.S. and our first game was against North Dakota State, and I remember returning some kicks against them, and we ended up losing by, I think, like 80 points. And I really got to see, the level of athleticism and how big the game is in the U.S. and the level of athletes that were playing it. But again, I still had some natural ability, and I relied on that. And the season overall, I think we were around 500. But just I learned a lot. I learned a lot about not only the game itself and understanding offenses and defenses and everything that goes into that, but just learning about how to, play at that level and the things that you need to do to be successful, at the collegiate level and in the U.S. And at the same time, I was away from home. I was just a young kid, and I was learning a lot about, how to be a man and growing up. So there's a lot of things that I was learning at once, and it was definitely an interesting experience for me.
Walk me through coming back home to Manitoba and playing for the Bisons. What changed for you to transfer to the CIS?
Yeah, for me, I think looking back on it, I was probably not really mature enough to be, living on my own and playing football in the States and going to school. I don't think I really understood, what went into that when I went there. And, I learned a lot of hard lessons along the way while I was in the States. And I kind of, messed up some opportunities and learned some hard lessons and things I regret. And then I got another opportunity. I came back to Canada And Coach Dobie was on the phone with me as soon as I got back here, and he found out I was in Winnipeg. And he right away, invited me out to camp and wanted me to be a Bison. And I felt like I was given another opportunity at football. That was kind of my identity. That's who I was. And Coach Dobie gave me another opportunity to do so. And, I got back here, I think in 2003, I went to camp. In 2004, I was on the Bisons. And, we had a lot of success over there and ended up winning a national championship and, made some of my closest friends and really, fell in love with the game again.
Just talking about that national championship, you won that in 2007, Manitoba's first Vanier Cup since 1970. What do you remember most from not just that game, but that whole run that season?
Yeah, I think I learned a couple of things. I would argue that maybe our better team was in 2006, to be honest with you. We went undefeated, and we really were whipping teams. We were beating teams by 30 points, 40 points. And then we got down to the Can West final in the Hardy Cup against Saskatchewan, and we ended up losing and getting upset. We'd gone undefeated all year, number one team in the country, and then we lost to Saskatchewan. And it taught us that going in from 2006 when we lost, going into 2007, we really took accountability as a team. And we realized, you can't rely on just your coaching staff and schemes and everything that comes with it in order to be successful. If you truly want to be a championship team, I really believe the team itself needs to hold each other accountable. And I think that mindset from 2006 to 2007 really allowed us to take that next step and become a championship team. And in 2007, we would be, down 14 points at the end of the third quarter or down 10 points at halftime. And we knew how to come back and win football games. We knew how to play in tight games. We knew what we needed to do to win. And I think in 2006, when we would just kind of steamroll everybody and win by 30, 40 points, you get into a tight game down the stretch in the playoffs. I don't want to say there's panic, but you're just not comfortable playing in those situations or, comfortable playing from behind. So I think, one, learning to play in close games and learning to win in those games and come back. And then two, having a culture and a mindset within your team that, accountability doesn't just come from the coaches, it comes from the players and holding each other accountable. So I think those were two things I really learned in those 2 years specifically at U of M.
Sounds very similar to a particular Western team 10 years later that won in 2017. And in 2016, we had lost to Laurier in the Yates Cup after we were winning by 21 points with 8 minutes left. I don't know if you saw that game, but probably one of the most iconic conference championships. It just didn't go our way. And then we lost a bunch of players in that receiver room, the D-line room. We were definitely better on paper in 2016 than 2017, and we just had a different kind of fire in that 2017 offseason, especially that led to a curse-breaking national championship season. So I can definitely relate to what you were saying with the 2006 to 2007 transition.
Oh yeah, I mean, losing teaches some of the best lessons. I've kind of come to learn that along the way, and that was definitely something in 2006 that we learned and changed kind of our mindset, I guess you could say. And 2007, we were victorious, right? We got our Vanier Cup, so it was awesome.
Exactly. Returning punts was a big part of your career. Take me inside the mind of a returner. What made you an effective specialist?
Well, I mean, the first thing you got to be able to do is catch the ball in the air. I mean, you see a lot of returners at the amateur level letting the ball bounce and, pick it up off of a bounce or two. And I think attacking the ball in the air and catching it in the air is first of all, the most important thing and getting possession. So, catching the ball, securing the ball security first and foremost. They're kicking the ball away. You need to have possession. You can't give it back to them. So first of all, is ball security, catching the ball in the air. And then I would say, understanding what you're trying to do and understanding, where your blocks are coming from, understanding, the timing of the blocks, understanding where you need to go. So with that, you want to have good vision. You want to have patience. You want to have obviously explosiveness and speed. That's definitely something you want to have in any returner. But to begin with, like I said, ball security, catching the ball in the air is the first thing you want to do. And then from there, you can kind of hit your plan of attack and attack where your wall is going to be or wherever your blocks are coming from, and then set that up and hit it with the timing.
You mentioned Brian Dobie earlier. You played your entire Bisons career under him. He ended up coaching there for around 3 decades, I believe. What was he like as a coach, and how much of how you run Recruit Ready today do you trace back to lessons from him?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Dobie, was the ultimate player's coach, and Coach Dobie is one of those guys that wasn't just a coach. He was a mentor and a father figure to a lot of guys. And Coach Dobie was one of those, doors open policy kind of people where you can always go in there and talk to him about whatever's on your mind or whatever's going on in life. Manitoba has really recruited some interesting people over the years, and a lot of different interesting scenarios have surfaced with players in their personal lives and their football careers throughout their time at Manitoba. And Coach Dobie's, did a great job of, juggling, the football side of things, but everything else that comes with it, So just a great guy, a real father figure, and somebody that you can, trust and you just feel comfortable. I've played in programs where you have coaches that, they're looking to cut you every day, and with Coach Dobie, you feel comfortable, you're not on edge. It's relaxed. He just does a really good job of creating a really nice dynamic and good energy and a comfortable place to play.
And after U of M, I believe you played arena football with the Green Bay Blizzard and Milwaukee Mustangs. What was that experience like, and how did it shape how you think about player development?
Yeah, so that was interesting. Obviously when we got done the Vanier Cup, my goal was to go to the CFL and I had some workouts with some teams and as time went on, I wasn't getting what I wanted from the CFL, and I ended up going to the Arena Football League. Had a lot of teams, hit me up. So the Arena 1 was in a strike year, so everybody was playing Arena 2 at the time because there was no Arena 1. I was supposed to go to Cleveland for Arena 1, and then the strike happened, so I ended up going to Green Bay and Milwaukee. And what I noticed, just the level of football being played down there was really impressive. We had guys coming and going from the NFL, guys coming and going from the CFL. So the level of football was really, really good. I always say arena football probably took 5 to 10 years off my life because, you're playing on the old school AstroTurf with the boards on the side. And it was a really, really interesting type of football to play, really, really physical. I remember the first game we played, we were playing, I think we were playing Iowa, and they sent me back there to return a kick to start the game. And you literally have to turn your back to the cover team and catch a ball rebounding off of a net. And then it's like playing, I don't know if you remember the game wall ball in school,
Yeah.
where you throw the ball and then have to go get it. So they kick off. You have to turn your back to the cover team, play the ball off the net, and then turn back around and then try to return the ball. So, arena football is really interesting. And again, it was really, really, really physical. Met some great people, but definitely an interesting type of ball, and it was a really cool experience.
And tell me about that transition from playing to strength and conditioning at Manitoba, I believe in 2012.
Yeah, so actually that came through Recruit Ready. So I really felt like when I played my football, I really didn't work out too much. I kind of just got by on natural ability, and I didn't put a premium on hitting the track and the weight room and all that kind of stuff. And I really felt that I left a lot of my football abilities on the table because I didn't put a premium on that stuff. And that's what kind of led to the beginning of Recruit Ready and training athletes. I wanted to make sure that nobody else in Winnipeg left anything else on the table. And I wanted to make sure that the kids that came up in Winnipeg in football, we got the most juice out of the lemon with those kids. Right. And so we started Recruit Ready, and then a year into it, Coach Dobie really liked the culture we were building just with the athletes that we were training. U of M was kind of going through a transition with their strength and conditioning coach. He got fired for some things. I don't know exactly what had happened, but they didn't have anybody. And myself and our recruit ready coaches were approached to train the Bison football team, and that's what we did. And I think, more than the programming itself that we brought to the Bisons at the time, it was the culture and the mindset that we were really trying to entrench in the team.
And take me back a bit to the beginning of Recruit Ready. Did it really start with basement weightlifting sessions at Oak Park with your co-founder, Blair?
Yeah. So again, when I got done playing football, I was trying to get in some CFL camps, getting done arena. I just met my wife, or now wife, my girlfriend at the time, but it was time to move on from football. So the CFL isn't going to pay life-changing money in most cases, right? So it was time to move into, my career, and I still wanted to stay attached to the game. And again, I felt like I'd left, a lot on the table with my own football career, and just wanted to make sure that we could, give opportunity to kids in Winnipeg, give them a path, give them a pathway to the next level, develop high performance, at a younger age, so that was the goal with it. I went to Oak Park High School. At the time, my sister was just getting done at Oak Park High School, and her friend group, I knew some of the kids in her friend group. Nic Demski was one of them. And I talked to Coach Stu Nixon, rest in peace. And I talked to Coach Nixon, and I said, listen, we want to coach a couple of kids at Oak Park High School. If we can get a group of like 10 kids, that would be great. And he said, yeah, we'd love to give you some kids. And so he gave us a group of 10 kids, and we went to the basement of Oak Park High School, and we trained those 10 kids, all winter and spring. And it worked out fantastic. Nic Demski was in that group. Brady Oliveira was in that group. And, the kids loved the training. We built really good relationships with them. And it kind of started there, and it never looked back from there, So it started in the basement at Oak Park. The next year we decided that we wanted to get into field work, because we were just doing strength and conditioning for that first year. The next year we wanted to get on the field. So we rented the golf dome in Winnipeg in the winter, and hit up some other high school kids in the city that were, prominent players and good recruits. And they all wanted to join, and we kind of haven't looked back.
Was there a moment where you realized that bigger and stronger wasn't always the same as better, that you needed football-specific on-field training?
Oh, absolutely. And you look at the game itself now, what I mean, with the spread offenses and just the RPOs and just the way the game's played. It's not the double tight end, smash mouth, wing T, power I. Like it's a game of speed and movement, and you can't be just big for nothing. You need to be strong and powerful. There's no doubt about it. But you equally as important, or if not more important, you need to be able to move well, efficiently, fast, all those kinds of things. So yeah, we really put a premium on that kind of stuff.
Was the Oak Park upset over St. Paul's in that 2013 high school bowl game one of the key moments of Recruit Ready's early momentum?
At that point, we had kids at a number of different schools. So I don't think it was key to the momentum of Recruit Ready. I mean, the game was fantastic. But I don't think it was, at that point, we had already kind of, started. We'd already started working our way into other schools. So I don't think it was key, but it certainly wasn't a bad look. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, that was a fantastic game, and a lot of really good players played in that football game.
And was coaching always the plan, or was it something that found you later?
You know what? It wasn't really, coaching wasn't really the plan. It was more player development, to be honest with you. Again, like I felt like it's stemming from my own playing career, where I felt like if I would have had someone to say, all right, you need to do this, and this in order to reach your goals. I needed that, and we didn't really have that in football, and I think developing a pathway outside of just your typical football coach, was something that really intrigued me and interested me. And it's not just coaching a high school team or a provincial team or a crunchers team. It was kind of its own niche, at the time. And I know it's, gained a lot of popularity, and there's a lot of trainers now that are sports specific and stuff. But I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to be able to provide a different pathway, so was coaching in the cards, I guess, because you're giving direction, and you're telling kids what to do and whatnot in the sport. But I look at it more of developing a pathway as opposed to coaching.
Walk me through what a year in the program looks like for a high school player who's training with you. What does that look like?
Yeah, so for us, we do tryouts in the middle of December. So if you're in the middle school or high school program, so now, just so you know, Alex, we start our kids in third grade all the way through. So we're like a vertically integrated program. We want to take them from third grade all the way to college. That's the goal of the program. And the whole, what we're trying to accomplish is to get a kid a free education through football. That's the main goal of the whole program. So depending if you're in middle school or high school, for our travel teams, you'd come try out. We typically have, for a high school kid, we take about 25 players for our 7-on-7 team, and we'll have about 200 kids try out for those spots. And then we have a lineman program as well, our Trench Academy program. We'll have another probably 50 kids in that. So they try out in December. Once you've made the program, we have a kind of like a training camp-esque kind of week. So over the Christmas break, between just before Christmas and just after New Year's, no one's in school. So we have the athletes from 6:30 in the morning till 9 a.m. So we'll have the high school team on from 6:30 till about 7:45, and then they'll go do film and install. And then we'll have the middle school team, doing film and install till 7:45, and then they'll come on the field till 9. So we have a lot of like classroom, film work, install, that kind of stuff, and field sessions throughout the whole Christmas break. So they're pretty tied up with us throughout the whole break, almost every morning. And then we get into school, comes back in the beginning of January, and we're Monday through Friday on the field, 6:30 until 8 o'clock in the morning. And then they head off to their various schools across Winnipeg and the whole metro area. And then you're on the field roughly 2 to 3 days a week during the winter. Travel roughly once a month to the US for 7-on-7 tournaments. And then we're doing the lineman 5-on-5s as well. So we really focus on the Midwest and have really established ourselves in the US Midwest for our tournaments and camps and whatnot. So that will run you middle of December till about end of April, roughly. End of April, we also have a track program. So we switch to combine, prep, and track. That will run until basically the last weekend of May, where mega camps start. And then we do some mega camps in the US, and then we hit some other Division I school specific camps. And everything is wrapped up here for football typically by mid-June for our programming, because camps are done. And then our provincial tracks, usually the provincial track championships usually run till the last weekend of June. So pretty much a 6-month block from the middle of December all the way to June. And there's a couple breaks, baked in within that, May long weekend, a couple weekends off and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's a 6-month commitment. So about half the year. And then we'll have some guys. So like, for example, our Division I kids come back, or our U Sport guys, I'll work with them just in speed, throughout the summer, and the spring on certain pockets of time when they're back in town.
And you've built a staff of several coaches. Tell me a little bit about your staff and how you assembled that team.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to be around some really, really great people, some really good men, fathers, coaches. like-minded people that want to just, push the needle and move the needle on the game of football in Winnipeg and give these young athletes opportunities. So myself and Blair Atkinson and Eddie Steele, who played in the CFL. Eddie now lives in Edmonton. Blair still is coach with us. He's our high school offensive coordinator. Blair's also the offensive coordinator for the Manitoba Bisons. So we started the program. But since then, Eddie moved away. The program's grown. So as time has gone on, we've added some incredible coaches. Obviously, Adam Big Hill's with us. His resume speaks for itself. Adam lives just down the road from me, so we've become really good friends. Nic Demski's, coaching with us now. He's like family to me. He just lives down the road, so we're together all the time. Kelly Butler, he played a career in the NFL. He's our offensive line coach. Keenan LaFrance, Nick Hallett, Charlie Ringland. The list goes on and on. Boyd Barrett, former Blue Bomber, Manitoba Bisons, a DC for our high school team. John Mackey. The list goes on. There's so many great coaches. We have kids that come back that played in our program, like Nic Demski. We got AK Gassama coaching, the Bakaru brothers, Jordan Hanslip. I could go on and on and on with Alex, with the guys that come back. And, if you've been in our program and you get done playing football, or even if you are still playing football, these guys really have taken an interest in the next generation, and they all just, come back and want to coach with us. And what's great about these guys too is they're selfless. There's no ego. It's not about any one specific coach. It's about the kids, and just giving them more opportunities and building the program to be able to do so. So I'm sure I'm leaving some coaches off the names off the table here, but there's just we've had so many great coaches, and we have so many great coaches.
And one of the coaches you mentioned, AK Gassama, his story is pretty remarkable. A kid who came to Canada as a refugee from Sierra Leone, grew up in Winnipeg, and was a team captain at Manitoba. How did you first come across him, and what did you see in him?
With the AK specifically, I think he joined us in 9th grade. He was at Vincent Massey. And with him, he was an undersized kid. Like, he was small, but quick as lightning, good hands, but just had a true passion for the game, and anytime you run a program, especially in Winnipeg at 6:30 in the morning in the winter, you're really going to get, you're either going to commit or you're not, and he was one of those kids that loved the game and wanted to get better. And he did so. He stuck it out. He got bigger, faster, stronger, and he was fortunate enough, to get an opportunity at the Blue Bombers. But yeah, we have a lot of kids like that come into the game and just have this hunger and burning desire to get better. And he was an example of that.
And New York Jets defensive tackle David Onyemata is one of Manitoba's favorite sons. Tell me about your relationship with him and how that developed over the years.
Yeah, so we first met David when we were working with the U of M specifically. So David came from Nigeria. He hadn't played any football. I think he's a soccer player when he got here. But I'll never forget, we were testing 40s the first year he was going into his first year at the Bisons. And like, when he went to the Bisons, like, he was off to the side, like doing some indie, like learning the game his first couple of years. Like, he wasn't playing, he was learning what football was. But I'll never forget, we were doing some 40s, and at the time he was like 340 pounds. Like, he lost a lot of weight in his time at Manitoba, and he ran like a 5.2 40. I remember at like 340, and he had really, really quick feet. And I just remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, like if this kid can buy in and if he can lose some weight and get powerful and strong, like, watch out for this kid. And sure enough, the rest is history with him. But he always had that underlying athletic ability. He had really, really good feet, a little bit overweight, but look at him now. His career has been, to dream come true, right? So with David, as time progressed, like, he did all the right things. He worked for me outside of football while he was in Winnipeg, but great kid, focused just about his business. everything you'd want in a football player and defensive lineman.
And Shai Ross didn't start his playing career until, I believe, his senior year of high school. What does his path say about what's still possible for a late bloomer?
Yeah, so Shai, Shai came to us after high school. His brother Alex Taylor was on our program. Alex went to Western, went to Edmonton, and he said, "Hey, I have a brother that's a pretty good football player. I'd like, can he come out?" And Shai came out. I think he was 18 or 19. He trained with us for a winter. Okanagan Sun were through one of our practices. We have a lot of teams that come throughout the winter, and they seen Shai at one of our workouts. And Shai was always like, he's twitched up, he can jump, he's pretty springy, he's really elastic. And so Shai was found by Okanagan, played out in Okanagan, ended up coming back to the Bisons, had a great career there, and then obviously went to the CFL for a bit. So I really believe with football that it's a skill game, but athleticism, plays a bigger role in football. And I feel like you can get into football a little later in life if you're a great athlete because of that. Where a sport like, maybe hockey or golf, even soccer to some extent, you really have to get the skill development going early in those sports. And the athleticism, although there is a level of athleticism to all those games, there's no doubt about it. I think the skill factor is more important at a younger age in those sports. Where with football, if you're a great athlete down the stretch, you can kind of pick the game up and play it later in life. So with Shai, he's a perfect example of that. We had a couple other guys too. We have a kid right now at Rhode Island, John Rabette, defensive end. John didn't play football until his senior year of high school as a running back. We had him in our program. We moved him to defensive end, and I think he had 5 or 6 D1 offers. Dolapo as well. I'm sure you're gonna ask me about him. He's another one as well, right? Those kids, athletic, can move well. Then you add the football skill down the stretch, and they can have a career, later in life with it.
Yeah, you mentioned Alex Taylor quickly there. He was a teammate of mine for 2 or 3 seasons, and one of the 4 or 5 Alexes that were on the team. So he was known as AT, and I was known as my last name, and all the other Alexes were known as our last names. So we were never called.
Is that Dr. Taylor now, isn't it, or it's supposed to be? Dr.?
Yeah, pretty close. I think he's finishing up at Queens. He was on the Queens coaching staff, not last season, but the year before. Now there's one of the other 3 Alexes that were on that 2017 Vanier Cup team that's on the Queens coaching staff. And then that third guy on that 2017 team, I don't know what happened to him, but you mentioned Dolapo quickly there as well. Dolapo Egunjobi's path stands out even among your D1 guys. He didn't play football until summer 2020, I think, and he's since gone from Manitoba to North Dakota to UT Martin, including bouncing back from a season-ending injury in his first game there. What do you remember about identifying him as a raw talent?
Yeah, so he actually, a buddy of mine, Ogo Okumbua, who's a basketball coach here in Winnipeg, called me about Dolapo at Fort Richmond. So Dolapo's a basketball player at Fort Richmond, and he's like, listen, this kid's, he's a big kid. I don't think he's going to play college basketball, but he might play college football. So Dolapo connected with us. He started training with us. The Bisons took one look at him and were like, "Yep, we'll take that kid." So he went to U of M. He needed a little bit more experience, obviously, because he'd just been a first-year player with football. So he was at U of M, I think, for 2 years, and then University of North Dakota seen him at one of our workouts, and they offered him. So Dolapo went down to UND. He was there for a year, and then he transferred to Tennessee Martin. But yeah, with Dolapo, length. He was a little bit skinnier at the time, but he had that wingspan. He had a frame that you could just look at, like, hey, we could put a lot of weight on this kid, and he could be a big, powerful, strong offensive lineman. Good feet from the basketball, and that's what we did. He continued to work out, he continued to train, and opportunities just continued to present themselves to Dolapo. And with him, I really feel this last year he was always still kind of learning, and it's like, okay, he needs to take the next step, and he needs to take the next step. And eventually, this last year, I feel like Dolapo really took that step, and things have really started to click with him, and he's playing like he looks, I guess I would say, so he's where we want him to be. I really think Dolapo could, if he has a year that I think he's going to have, I think he legitimately could get an NFL look next year. And our O-line coach, KB, Kelly Butler, always joke about this. I'm like, we had Gio as a first overall pick this year. I'm like, you might have another first overall pick next year with Dolapo. And I really believe that. Like, he's really coming into his own. So he's definitely somebody to keep on your radar.
We talked about coaches a bit earlier. Blue Bombers receiver Nic Demski, who you mentioned, is one of the guys who came up through the program and now coaches with you. What's it like having guys like Nic on the other side of the whiteboard?
It's awesome. I mean, Nic's one of my best friends, and I mean, Nic's he's an amazing guy. And what's really cool about Nic is that he has the same kind of mindset and passion for this that we do. Like, he loves football, and he loves to spend his time developing the next generation of football talent, and not everybody has a passion for the game outside of playing the game, for example, Brady Oliveira, another kid that came up in our program. Brady's like family, but Brady spends his time helping dogs. He loves the game of football. He's a great teammate. He's a warrior, a hard worker, but Brady wants to help dogs. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic. He wants to help people or things or animals. And that's great. With Nic wants to do what we're doing. He wants to help young football players. And I think that's fantastic. It's something that we're passionate about, and it's something that Nic's passionate about. And I think, he's been able to find a good balance between maintaining a great professional football career and coaching. And I think as, he gets towards the end of his career, I think his impact in coaching will only increase. And I think, when he's done playing the game, like, this is what I think he will do.
Talking about some of the pathways to the States, one of your pipelines to the U.S. was Clearwater Academy in Florida, a school that, by my own estimation, had more Canadians than Americans for the last 6 to 7 years until it shut down in 2024. Dallas Sims, Sean Sevillano Jr., Trey Tomlinson, Giordano Vaccaro, Nathan Karabatsakis, and Ryland Kelly are all names that can point to both Recruit Ready and Clearwater for who developed them. How did your relationship with Clearwater Academy start?
Yeah, so our first experience with Clearwater Academy came during COVID. Things were shutting down here in Canada and in Winnipeg, and we had a group of kids that we felt were blue chip kids that should be going to big Division I schools. And I mean, going Division I out of Canada is tough enough, but going Division I out of Canada during COVID, where you have no film and you haven't played football, is damn near impossible. So we started looking for some places that would be able to take our kids that were still playing a high school football season. So I reached out to Coach Jesse and got the ball rolling, just in conversation about some kids that we had. And I know at the time, I think they had, I want to say Kiki Messidor was there, and same with
Antoine Raymond as well.
Sorry?
Antoine Raymond as well.
I don't think Antoine was there yet.
Oh, okay.
When we first started talking. And Ajo was there. That's who it was. So it was Ajo and Kiki Messidor were there. And it was like, okay, these are, big name Canadian recruits. Like, so that's why I kind of connected with Coach Jesse. And then, I started sending film and talking about specific kids and their measurables and all that kind of stuff. And our first class down there, Delano Glad, who's at Liberty, is the linebacker, Sean Sevillano Jr. at Notre Dame, Ryland Kelly at Minnesota. Nate was at Robert Morris. That was just our first group that went down there. And, everybody had success. The kids that we were sending down there were as advertised. We weren't, trying to sell snake oil to him, like what you see is what you got, and what they were was what they said they were going to be. So that's kind of where things started. And then from there, people started seeing the opportunities that our kids were getting from Clearwater Academy, just going there in itself, we had, for example, when Dallas Sims was young, he's a great talent and he's training with us, and he commits to Clearwater Academy, and 2 days later, Iowa State and Pitt offer him. And it's like, he's in ninth grade in Winnipeg and nothing changed except he committed to Clearwater Academy, right? And it like those opportunities don't just come to you in Canada, but being connected to those schools and playing at those schools, those opportunities do come to you. And if we can develop the athlete and send them to those schools to give them those opportunities, then that's what we're going to do. Because we're a program that, we're not, yes, we compete as a team in certain dynamics, but this program is about giving athletes on an individual level their best opportunities to success. And, kids come into our program, Alex, with dreams of playing, for the Blue Bombers or the Minnesota Vikings or Green Bay Packers or Ohio State or University of Florida. And, a lot of those, especially the collegiate dreams, like a lot of those are just pipe dreams, and now all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, like these Winnipeg kids, they can go to those places and they can have success and they can get scholarships to those places that were just, a pipe dream to kids from Winnipeg. So that really, really strengthened the relationship. Those opportunities, I should say, really strengthened our relationship with Coach Jesse. Coach Jesse with me has always been somebody that's kept it 100. I go down there quite often, and what you see is what you get. The kids are taken care of. Our kids graduate, and it's everything we want it to be.
I'm interested to know what your current crop of high school players looks like. Who are some of the guys who you're really excited about going into the future?
Yeah. So, as time has gone on, obviously, so Clearwater Academy, closed, and now Coach Jesse's at St. Petersburg Catholic, just down the road. One thing I think that's important to note, though, is with the relationships with the American schools, it's not a one size fits all approach with the schools down there. Some kids, their best opportunity might be at St. Petersburg Catholic or, with Coach Jesse. Some kids might have some kind of academic situations and, they need to go to a different school. So we have, a lot of kids that went to St. Thomas More in Connecticut up there for Coach Anderson. We have kids at Rabun Gap this year down in Georgia for Coach White. So I think it's important to understand the pathway isn't the same to the States for each kid, So I think that's an important thing to note. So to answer your question now, who do we like that's coming up? Well, we have a defensive tackle right now, Antaeus Kabulu. He's playing for Coach Jesse at St. Petersburg Catholic. I think he's the next Sean Sevillano right now. So he's going to be a 2028. He has Eastern Michigan and North Dakota right now, but I think he just went down to St. Petersburg last week. His strength, power, speed combination, I think, is something we haven't seen before. And I think you'll see him playing. His dream school for Tay is Georgia in the SEC. And I don't think that's an unrealistic possibility for him. So I think you're going to see him blow up. We have an offensive lineman going to St. Thomas More, Denzel. I think he could end up, being a 4-star. He's 6'6". He's got a 7'3" wingspan. He's 295 pounds. So he's actually from Nigeria in Canada on a student visa. He was playing basketball, and somebody, I don't know who it was, told him to hit us up back in the fall. And he started working with us, and now he's off to St. Thomas More. We have a defensive end, Ramsey Millar. He's going to St. Thomas More. We have a whole group of underclassmen receivers that will be going, I think, a couple of them next year. Dallas Sims' little brother, Dante Sims, he's going into 10th grade. He's 6'2", 190 pounds, fast, athletic, could play safety, linebacker, receiver. He's another one to watch out for. But even you even go even younger now We got kids that are in like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade that we're excited about. Obviously their pathway and development will determine how good they'll be. But our baseline athleticism and the young kids that we're getting through the program now is really, really impressive. And I think in the next, 4 or 5 years, there'll be a lot more blue chip kids coming out of Winnipeg.
Now, talking college ball here, tell me a little bit about your NCAA and U Sports guys or people should be watching this year.
Yeah, so NCAA, I know Delano Glad's, a starting linebacker at Liberty, so I definitely be watching him. Brandon Kube's at South Florida, so he's got a new coach down there from Ohio State. I think he's going to do real good at the tight end position. He's a receiving tight end. Brian Hartline's down there now. I think he's really going to have a big year for them. Sean Savillano at Notre Dame. Riley Kelly's going into his last year at Minnesota, so I think he'll have a good year. We talked about Dolapo Egunjobi. I think he's going to have a great year. I think he can go to the NFL. We got John Rabette at Rhode Island. He really could have a blow-up year. I could see him having a big year and then transferring up next year. Lincoln Zylstra, he's at Holy Cross, defensive lineman. He could have a big year. This side of the border, I really think Marcus Wall, he was a kid that we had, defensive back. He went to UND, and I think he could definitely so he went to UND, came back up, played at Manitoba, was a Can West All-Star last year. I really think he could be somebody that could blow up this year in U Sport. Trying to think who else is out there. Ryan Wurtzfeld, quarterback out at UBC. I think he could be a big-time impact player for them. I know him and Drew Vito are going to battle it out for that starting position out there. Ryan was a quarterback that played stateside in Tennessee and was getting a lot of D1 interest. But unfortunately, Tennessee ended their reclass rule. So he wasn't able to reclass, and he lost a year of high school football and ended up at UBC. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So he's there. Try to think who else would be a big U Sport player this year. Obviously, we got a ton of kids. Pretty much every starter from Winnipeg on the Bisons comes through our program. So I think you're going to see a lot of kids there have some big years. But yeah, I mean, coast to coast, there's kids everywhere. And I'm excited for this time of year because you really never know who's gonna pop up and be that guy, So we have a freshman safety going to Western, Amias First. I think he's going to have a big year. Sam Opanubi, defensive back, going to Calgary. He definitely was a Division I kid, but ended up staying here in Canada. His brother actually is a top defensive end at Manitoba. He's like 6'7", 7'3" wingspan, named Izzy Opanubi. So yeah, lots of kids all over and an exciting time of year.
Big picture, what does the next 5 years of Canadian football development look like at Recruit Ready?
Well, I mean, we try to always be, at the forefront of player development. I think what you're going to see in the next few years is an elimination of tackle football for 10 and under. I think the crunchers age, I think is going to become obsolete because of the, how big flag football is getting for boys and girls. And I think flag football for boys is a great development tool for young kids, like, from 5 to maybe 10 or 12 before they play tackle. And just to touch on the flag, like our program recognizes that. So we've added flag for our young kids. We have a girls flag football program as well. And I think for girls, flag football is the way to go. I think it's fantastic. They're giving scholarships now in it. I know for my daughter, we'd love to see her play football and flag football in college. So for girls, flag football, I think is the pathway, and that's only going to get bigger. For boys, I think till 10 or 12, flag football is going to be, where people play. Once you get to, 10 to 12 years old and up, I think you're going to see more travel football. I think you'll start seeing in tackle too, not just the 7-on-7 and the flag. I think you'll start seeing more just like, a couple teams that play regionally. And I think we need to really put a premium on, as a whole for football, is getting newcomers playing the sport. If you look, soccer just passed hockey as number one played new sport in Canada. Um, I think there's a lot of people, especially newcomers, that we want to get into football, and I think it's important. Our program specifically is really trying to entrench ourselves with a lot of the newcomer programs for when they come to Winnipeg, and they, resource centers and programs that help people get situated when they come to Canada. That those are programs that we've really tried to entrench ourselves with and give opportunities for those kids that are coming to Canada. So getting newcomers playing the game, I think, is something we need to do just as a whole from coast to coast, and something we're going to do in our program. And then I think, providing that safe skill development through flag for the young kids, I think is what you're going to see with football as time goes on.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
The other thing is, to sort of cut you off, but one thing that we've done is also so not only are we trying to, get newcomers to come into football, but we're also we've taken it upon ourselves. We go to other sports and try to get kids to play football. So we'll go to basketball tournaments, we'll go to track meets, we'll go to soccer pitches, we'll go to those places and try to get kids to come and play football. And I think if you have a program that's, proven and has give kids, opportunities to get free education, I think that you have a lot of pull, and it's worked for us to get kids to come from other sports because of what we've been able to accomplish in Recruit Ready. And that's something that we're just going to do more and more and more of.
Yeah, I'm excited for the 2027 U Sports season when flag football enters the conversation. I'm a rushers coach at Western here, so I'm excited for that opportunity and getting access to better fields and stadiums, because right now we wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, to go play on a not so well maintained grass field, which is called the Health Sci Fields because it's just next to the Health Sci buildings. But it's an exciting, and we also have 11v11 flag football here in Ontario, which is an interesting game because you have a full O-line, D-line in flag, and I'm teaching like pass rush techniques, and so it's a lot of fun, a lot more contact than standard 5v5, but it's an interesting thing. But I don't know how long that's going to exist now that we have the 5v5 in Olympics. So it might just be 5v5 for the next bit.
So are you coaching the girls?
Yeah, year round. So we do 5v5 in the fall, and then starting in like January we do 11v11, and then that ends in March, and then we go back to 5v5 for the last couple months of the school year, March, April, which is more the Football Ontario tournaments, and then the national tournament, which we didn't get to go to this year, but we're definitely excited for the fall at least.
Cool. Yeah, I think that the pathway for females is just getting bigger and bigger and more entrenched, and you can just see what the NFL and CFL are trying to do with flag football, and it's working. And again, I think I'm a tackle football guy, and we're all tackle football guys. I think it's great for the young guys, the young boys, and then obviously it's become an Olympic sport. But I always say to people, kids don't come into Recruit Ready, dreaming of playing for the Canadian national flag team. They want to play for, again, the Blue Bombers or Alabama or Ohio State or, the Dallas Cowboys or whatever it is. But I think it's a great development tool, and there's more opportunity for it. So, it keeps people playing the game longer. It gets more eyes on the game. It gets more people talking about the game. So, whatever we can do to get more eyes and more attention to football, I'm all for it. So.
Exactly. Just to finish off here, what do you still want Recruit Ready to become that it isn't yet?
That's a great question. I would like to get to a point where kids can get the same opportunity playing football in Canada as they can playing football in the US. That's where we would like to get to. How do we do that? Well, I think we're on the right path. But I think there needs to be a perception change in the US amongst coaches, and that's a tough thing to do. We're getting to a point now with our program where we've been coaching other people's kids for close to 15 years now. And the coaches in our program now, we have our own kids coming through it. Like I got young kids, Biggie's got young kids, Blair's got young kids, Nick's got young kids, Keenan's got young kids, Kelly's got young kids. We all got, a bunch of us have young kids, and now our kids are starting to come through the program. And, it would be great to not have to send our sons away to school for high school if we don't have to, and I mean, like, let's be honest, like if to give the kids the same opportunities in Canada right now, you can't, like, yes, you can go D1 from Canada. It happens. We have kids that do it. Happens all over the place, but you're not, it's way, way more difficult. And I don't think you're going to get the big school opportunities from up here. You got to go down south for that. Right. And it would be nice if we could, have those same opportunities for our kids coming directly from Canada. So that would be the goal. Short term, we're really entrenching ourselves in the girls flag, like from like 5 to 20 or till they go off to school. And in the boys flag, really entrenching ourselves, from the 5 to 12-year-old demographic.
And where can people go online to find you, find Recruit Ready and yourself?
Yeah, so social media, obviously, 2026, everybody's all over social media. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And then you can go to recruitreadyacademy.com as well. Yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of us. Typically, we're out there looking for athletes. So more often than not, we'll find you. But yeah, if people have any questions or want to get involved, they're always welcome to reach out, and happy to have a conversation.
Thanks so much, Brad, for your time today. And I'm excited to see what the future of Recruit Ready and the Manitoba football system looks like.
Appreciate you, Alex. And thanks for having me on, man. It means a lot. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of Double Major, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and following on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you don't miss out on the people and stories behind Canadian college football. Follow along on Instagram and TikTok at Double Major CFB, as well as my personal account at Alex M. McComb on X and Instagram for clips and updates from every show. Keep your grades up and your pads down. Class is dismissed. We'll see you next time.